Whip out your front butts and ready your cross guns. It's time for another classic Jerry adventure, yo! You're watching Whitney Vision, and these are all the Easter eggs you might have missed in The Last Temptation of Jerry. This is your spoiler warning! If you haven't seen Season 8, Episode 4 yet, hit pause on this video and come back once you've reached the Amada Bra. I don't know about you guys, but I've been looking forward to this episode since Adult Swim released those clips around April Fool's Day. And I wasn't disappointed. I really liked this ep. It was definitely more reference heavy than character development focused, and from what I've seen online, people are either calling it the best episode of the season or one of the worst of the series. Definitely let me know whether you guys liked it or not in the comments below, but please be sweet to each other if you happen to disagree. This week's episode title is a reference to the film The Last Temptation of Christ, directed by Martin Scorsese. Starring Willem Dafoe as Jesus and David Bowie as Pontius Pilate, it imagines Jesus' struggles with earthly temptations like lust, fear, doubt, and depression before his death. They didn't cast Bowie as Judas because he absolutely would have slipped Jesus some tongue during the betrayal. When this movie first came out in the 80s, a bunch of Christians got real mad because the movie showed Christ fantasizing about getting it on with a nice lady. But come on, you're trying to tell me that a man in his 20s to early 30s who canonically had six-pack abs and hung out exclusively with sex workers never once got a boner? Not even one? His dad is literally the inventor of boners. But whatever, back to The Last Temptation of Jerry. The episode opens with Jerry singing his own modified version of Deck the Halls, with Easter-themed lyrics, excited and ready to celebrate the holidays with his family. But much to his chagrin, no one else seems to be stoked about Easter. For starters, Morty's pretty focused on his new JFK Fortnite Twitch stream, and Summer's busy packing for spring break. On the door of her room, she has a poster for The Water Horse, Legend of the Deep, a story about a boy named Angus who discovers a mysterious egg that turns out to be the Loch Ness Monster, foreshadowing for the egg monsters to come in this episode. Beth is too busy watching The Bachelor, which we first saw the family watching in Season 1's Rixty Minutes. No one in the Smith-Sanchez family really even knows what Easter's all about. Rick accuses Jerry of only knowing about Easter from the aisles at Costco, which can only mean one thing. Somewhere in the Parmesian dimension, a version of the Costco guy's TikToks exist. While driving to get more Easter supplies, Jerry pops a Choco egg in his mouth that looks similar to a Cadbury egg. But suddenly, the Easter Bunny runs in front of Jerry's car, and he accidentally runs it over. This is not Jerry's first roadkill rodeo. Back in Season 2's A Wrinkle in Time, Jerry hit a deer that crossed in front of his car while slurping a rum raisin ice cream cone. Maybe this dude shouldn't snack and drive. Back at the house, Jerry started acting weird. He eats 2 whole heads of lettuce straight out of the fridge, and MacGyvers himself a little bunny water bottle to drink from. After finding a 13th century Germanic cross on the dead rabbit, Rick scans show alongside it a painting of subjects kneeling before a king and his knight, offering a colorful Easter egg. Rick realizes that Jerry has been Easter Claused, just like Tim Allen, and will slowly turn into the Easter Bunny over the next 2 days. The Santa Claus tells the story of Scott Calvin, a hot mess divorced dad who morphs into Kris Kringle after the previous Santa fell off his roof and died. One of the first signs of his transformation is his insatiable desire to eat milk, cookies, and any other desserts he can get his hands on, just like Jerry with the lettuce and water. After trapping Jerry in a mitogen deterrent crystal to slow down the Easter Claus effects, and giving Summer a second stomach specifically for digesting alcohol, Rick and Morty head off to Dan Brown this shit. Dan Brown's thriller novels, such as Angels and Demons or The Da Vinci Code, heavily feature themes of Christianity, and each 24-hour treasure hunt is solved using cryptography, art history, and conspiracy theories, just like Rick and Morty do in this episode. The boys travel by map, Indiana Jones style, to the German Alps, where the Easter Bunny's lore first originated in real life. The first recorded writings about an Easter hare date back to 1682, when writer George Frank von Frankenau referred to a German folk belief in his book on Easter eggs. The original Easter Bunny was a more judgmental figure, kinda like modern-day Santa. Only good children would find eggs hidden in their gardens. Rick believes the cross and the rabbit were both buried beneath the permafrost, until climate change, David Zaslav, and cigarettes ruined everything. If you ask any of my friends, they will tell you that one of my biggest fears in the entire world is the permafrost melting. And it should be your biggest fear too. Basically, the permafrost is a layer of earth made up of soil, rocks, and ice that stay frozen solid for 2 or more years. But buried within the layers of the permafrost lie ancient microbes, some as old as 400,000 years old. When the permafrost melts, those ancient microbes are released, bringing forth diseases that humans haven't seen in centuries and don't have medicine for. And in this situation, it obviously let a sex-crazed bunny rabbit loose in the multiverse, so that isn't super great either. The only thing that scares me almost as much much as Earth's inevitable collapse due to global warming are evil CEOs like David Zaslav, who recently shelved several finished or almost finished projects at Warner Bros. Discovery. Now that this show is streaming on HBO Max, it's understandable that Rick is worried about 100 years of Rick and Morty getting backgirled. Rick references two classic movies about thawing ancient beings, Iceman and Encino Man. The first is a 1984 sci-fi drama about a caveman thawed from the ice and brought back to life by scientists, and the latter is a 90s comedy about Sean Astin finding caveman Brendan Fraser frozen in his backyard. Morty claims that he's too young to have seen either of them, but come on, dude. He references The Wicker Man like 45 seconds later. That's a British folk horror movie from the early 70s, so if you can dig that relic up, you can put some respect on Encino Man's name. The Wicker Man is about a cop sent to investigate a missing girl on an isolated island, where he's bummed to find out that the local population has abandoned Christianity to worship pagan gods. In the end, he's placed in a Wicker Man sculpture and burned alive as a sacrifice, similar to the burning effigies we see in this village. Rick's scan reveals that many of the stones used in the mosaic are alien shards from the Andromeda Galaxy, which is the closest galaxy to our own, over 2.5 million light-years away. But before they can leave the village, a group of space Christians show up with cross guns, ready to fight. Their cathedral-inspired spaceship has the features of biblical angels, including 6 wings and many eyeballs. According to Isaiah 6:2, seraphim are angels with 6 wings, and the book of Ezekiel 10:2 describes cherubim as horrifying angelic beings with eyes all over their bodies. Even the organ on the Space Christian's ship has wings and eyes. When Rick and Morty travel to the Amada Bra by map, you can see the Cthulhu monster from the opening credits chilling just outside the swirling galaxy, which has an egg at its center. As they approach the planet's castle, Rick says it gives him H.R. Geiger meets Coachella vibes. As fans of the Alien franchise probably already know, H.R. Geiger is the artistic father of the biomechanical art style, blending the human physique with machinery. Not only was he part of the award-winning design team of the Alien franchise, he's responsible for designing the Xenomorph. Although Morty might need to brush up on his mural media literacy skills, Rick interprets that the Easter Bunny is a pheromonal catalyst, sent to Earth to cause entire civilizations to uncontrollably jackhammer like rabbits. This fuck-based terraforming is designed to overpopulate the planet, causing its eventual collapse. The men behind this mayhem are giant dudes with Easter Island heads and front butts, modeled after the engineers from Alien Prometheus, which Rick later recaps in full for Morty off-screen. The engineers also had large stonehead monoliths on their planet, similar to the ones on Easter Island. But man, if I had a nickel for every time Sarah Chalke was in a show with front butts, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. As the Christ Troopers attack the Easter Island dudes, Summer by Antonio Vivaldi plays during the fight scene. I love that one of the Space Christians calls Rick the dentist, probably because of his lab coat. As they escape through the butthole of the building, Rick places an explosive device on a round stone that rolls over to cover their exit, just like Jesus' tombstone was rolled away on Easter morning. Before they hop into the Easter Island spaceships, Morty says, "I've seen this on TV," and the first thing I thought was, I bet that motherfucker's thinking of Squidward's house from SpongeBob. Christ Trooper General Richard Kincaid introduces himself to Rick and Morty after a brief standoff on Easter Island, during which Rick activates a cybernetic implant that looks like a rock hand taser. Reinhardt is a German name that means brave counsel or strong advisor, and Kincaid is a Scottish name that means battle leader, which makes sense because he's the head guy in charge of making sure that no one in the multiverse does any fucking or sucking. As he makes his intro, the general raises 2 fingers together slightly bent, a pose often used by artists depicting Christ. IRL, this character is voiced by Eben Moss-Backrack, aka Cousin, aka The Thing. But now it's time to hop on back to Beth and Jerry, because they're going through it back home. After growing sexy muscles and busting out of the mitogen deterrent prison, Jerry seduces Beth by speaking Na'vi, of course translated with papyrus font subtitles. But after boning down, it's morphin' time. Jerry grows a tail, his mouth gets all bunny-shaped, and his teeth start falling out Margaret Qualley Substance style. The way his legs break to give him bunny speed and hopping strength kind of reminds me of the body horror in The Fly when Jeff Goldblum gets his guts all over Gina Davis. After he flees the house, Christ Troopers with Catholic thuribles perform an incense ritual and start tracing Jerry's sex bunny pheromones down. Jerry ends up at Joe's, a random dive bar with line dancing. They've got a couple different drink signs around. The ones outside the windows read Doc's Huckle Brew and third place IPAs on draft. And inside we also see signs for Cosmic Ale, Filler Light, and Ruby Cow energy drinks, a Red Bull parody. We've actually seen these signs for Tap's Original Brew and Stiff Turkey Whiskey before, back in Season 4's Rattlestar Ricklactica. Jerry ends up at a bar after Rick makes his body lighter than air so that he wouldn't hurt himself hanging Christmas lights. But because he loses one of his shoes, which Rick made heavier than air to keep him buoyant but prevent him from floating away, he's carrying a boulder, and the bar patrons don't take too kindly to that. Those are the exact same bar patrons that welcome Jerry at Joe's in this episode, because they think he crashed his motorcycle. This dude is still wearing his Led Zeppelin shirt, and this guy has a Route 69 patch on his jacket. On the walls, there's also a Love Beer license plate and a C rating that the employees turned into a credit accepted sign. Check out the pinball scores on the wall while Jerry's making everyone horny. The names and scores recorded belong to members of the Rick and Morty art department. We've got Devin Devo Roth, art director, Lisa Epps Easel, background artist, Alicia Chenoyan, background designer / design cleanup, Devin Adams, background design cleanup, Betsy Luck, background designer, and Tommy Scott, background designer. There's also a sign that reads Martin's Martinis, but there's too many people with Martin in their name who work on the show for me to guess if it's a reference to anyone else on the crew. The Christ Troopers kidnap Jerry and bring him to Easter Island, where he goes full werewolf bunny mode. I'm not gonna lie, this is a lot scarier than Wallace and Gromit led me to believe it would be. Jeez. When Jerry says, "There is no Jerry, only Bunny," that's a reference to Dana's line, "There is no Dana, only Zool," from Ghostbusters. His attack leaves blood splatter in the shape of a cross on one of the Easter Island heads, and Reinhardt is severed in half. Back home, Morty reminds Rick that he taught him about rat utopia in the past. An ethologist, or animal scientist, named John B. Calhoun invented a term called behavioral sink to describe the collapse in behavior that can result from overpopulation. Calhoun built a rat utopia for 32 rats to live inside. It had unlimited food and water, allowing for unfettered population growth. He found that once the mice reached a high population density, they'd start exhibiting destructive behavior, like refusing to mate or abandoning their offspring. After only 600 days, the population was headed for extinction. And that's basically what's happening here in Jerry's bunny rabbit fuck utopia. After Reinhardt saves the day by shooting the front butt Easter Island guy bunny with Rick's vaccine, he heads home to his wife in their cathedral-shaped home. He tries to pitch boning down to her, but she's not having it. Apparently, he's been gone for 20 years, so she kicks him to the curb. When he says, "I have lived my life poorly," that's a reference to the Ancient Knights line at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The Smith-Sanchez family decides to embark on a new holiday tradition, destroying every holiday in the Parmesian dimension so they don't have to celebrate one ever again. During our first Christmas with this family, they exploded a disease-riddled Santa, and when Morty got a lightsaber a different year, he dropped it perfectly fucking vertically and almost destroyed the Earth's core. One Thanksgiving, Beth and her space clone start a three-way with Jerry, and another year we had a mutant turkey take over at the White House. I'm not even gonna talk about what happened on Independence Day. I have the sneaking suspicion that this war on holidays directly comes from a fed-up and annoyed writer's room pushing back on network mandates for holiday episodes. I could totally see someone at the network being like, "So we're planning on coming back in April, so we want you to do an Easter episode." And the creative team being like, "Okay, but our show is notorious for falling behind schedule. What if the season isn't ready for weekly airings come April? Then what? Are we gonna put out an Easter episode in the middle of June?" At which point, the writers realized that in-season holiday episodes were guardrails to keep them on track. So they responded with malicious compliance. The network gets its stupid Easter episode, but that's all. Canonically, the Smiths now will never celebrate holidays again. Sorry, Zaslav. But hey, that's just a theory. A disgruntled employee theory! As the Deck the Halls Easter song reprises, the Smith-Sanchez fam kills Earth Day, Cinco de Mayo, either Memorial Day, Veterans Day, or the 4th of July, I can't tell, Labor Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. On Halloween, Mr. Goldenfold dresses up like Dracula, and another teacher is wearing a Sonic costume. Morty also attacks a kid wearing a work costume from over the garden wall. For some reason, this song also calls out Burger King in their slogan, Whoppers, Big Macs, Corvettes, Hondas, and Mr. Golf Carts. Labor Day and Thanksgiving are shown taking place on September 3rd and November 23rd, which means that this episode takes place in the year 2023, lining up with around the time it was actually being written. But oh no! While they were decimating all the religious holidays off screen, they totally forgot to pick summer up from spring break. Apparently, aging Ash Ketchum from Season 4's Claw and Hoarder Special Rickdom's Morty episode was forgotten by his parents too, because he's also roaming the wasteland of Daytona in December. Unfortunately, Summer's roommate died because her grandpa didn't give her an extra alcohol stomach before she left, but DJ Catmouse is apparently still alive to drop another beat. These are all the Easter eggs and details that I could find in The Last Temptation of Jerry, but I want to know if there's anything I missed in the comments. Like and subscribe to Whitney Vision, hit that notification bell, and be sure to check out my podcast Guardians of the Galaxy with Tommy Bechtold and MT. I'm Scarlet Wit, and you're watching Whitney Vision.